What's up, guys? Welcome back to Airbnb ABCs. Oftentimes when I'm talking to a new investor or just anyone that's looking to get into the Airbnb market or pick up a new property, they're always wanting to know how much will a property make. And that's a really good question, because that really makes your decision to go or no go on the property. And what I see a lot of times is people going to these aggregate sites on the internet, such as Airdna, Rabbu, and I'm sure there's several others that folks go to, and they're saying, well, this is what these things are saying, this is how much they say they're going to make, and they're saying, is this accurate? Or they're saying that you cannot make money in this market because of what Airdna and Rabbu are saying. And what we're going to look at today is, are these softwares, are these websites, are they accurate? Are they reliable? And we are going to compare them to the actual numbers that I have done in the Smoky Mountains market over the last year on 3 different properties. So the first thing that we really need to nail down is, what is gross income? That would seem to be something that should be pretty easy to come to a consensus on, but there's lots of folks out there that want to eliminate things like cleaning fees. They want to eliminate any type of fee that's not actually the nightly rate. And when you look at gross income, you really have to take all of it into account, in my opinion, in order for it to be fair. Because for one person to say that their gross is $85,000, but another one to say, well, no, your $10,000 of cleaning fees or whatever isn't included in the gross, that is just simply not true. When you go to file your taxes, they're going to want to know every single dollar that came into your account, and then you take your expenses off of that. So for my opinion, the only way to accurately get an apples to apples comparison on gross income is just all the money that comes in. And this is sort of a place where Airdna and Rabbu differ on how they get their numbers. And they also, from what I've read and from what I can get from their websites and all the internet, they collect their data in different ways. You see, Airdna gets their data from Airbnb and VRBO, and that data also includes the cleaning fees that people are collecting, for cleaning their places, whether they give all that to their housekeeper or they keep some of that for themselves. It's not really reflected in any way, but it should, in theory, capture most of the income that's coming in for these particular properties. When I look at Rabbu, it seems as if they only get their money from Airbnb, their revenue data. It does not include cleaning fees from what I can see, and we're going to see that reflected in one of our properties that tends to do better on Airbnb than on VRBO, whereas our other 2 properties are pretty evenly split between Airbnb and VRBO. And one other thing that this doesn't take into account at all, either of these, is any kind of direct booking income, and that is because it's just not easy for these things that scrape this aggregate data over a certain geographical range, bedrooms, guests, what percentile of the income that they're in. All of these things make a big deal about how they come up with the revenue numbers. But for the purposes of this example, I have just gone into these sites, typed in an address, typed in the bedrooms, baths, and max guests that the places can have, and that is all I did to the software, to the algorithm. That is what I find most people, I think, are doing, is just going in, putting in the basic information, and then using whatever number it spits out as gospel. And so we are going to compare that number to what I get actually in the Smoky Mountains for 3 different cabins. So the first place we're going to look at is our place we call Moonlight Ridge. It is rented as a 2-bedroom, 2-bath that sleeps up to 6. And when we look into my QuickBooks software, the actual data for the last fiscal year, which was January to December of 2022, and this is when the market had sort of started coming down a bit from its super duper highs of 2021. I think in 12-month period from when we bought it in July of 2021 to 2022, I think the max we did in the 12-month period is like $91,000. But for this period, we did $85,206 in gross revenue, and our expenses, as far as cleaning expenses, were about $12,000. When you compare that to, let's start with the Airdna number, because this should, according to what I've seen, scrape as much of the information as they can from Airbnb, VRBO, and the cleaning data. We're looking at $61,100 for 2-bed, 2-bath with 6 guests. And so, you're looking at almost a $20,000 shortfall in that. If you just take it, you type in the address and you use the numbers that it gives you. When we shift over to Rabbu here, this is the one that I've heard only scrapes from Airbnb and does not include the cleaning data, we're only looking at an average revenue projection of just under $40,000, which is over 50% less than what we actually made. And I really don't put any stock into really any of the data if it's that far off from our actual numbers. And this is where folks, I think, when they type in and they look at a place that's 5, 6, 700,000, and then they start running their own numbers and they see that the annual revenue projection is 40,000 or 67,000. I think that's where a lot of folks get derailed of it not being a good investment based on just some quick, easy button, Airdna or Rabbu data. The next property we're going to look at is the place that we call Whispering Woods. This again is a 2-bed, 2-bath, sleeps up to 6 folks. It's a pretty large cabin for being a 2-bed, 2-bath. It does not have an awesome view. The first place we had has a great mountain view, and it has some very unique features such as like indoor and outdoor wood fireplaces. This one does not have a great view. It has a nice wooded view, and it is a pretty nice cabin, but it just doesn't have all those massive features that kind of like make it pop. And for 2022, we did about $72,000. I think that's probably a little on the low side of what we could have done. We had some issues at the end of the year with freezing and just a big time disaster around wintertime where we had several $1,000s of reservations canceled. But when we get into Airdna, it's only saying that we're going to make $58,000 all included. You can see here I selected 2-bed, 2-bath with 6 guests, so we are at least about $13,000 shy on that one. And then again on the Rabbu, we are looking at an annual revenue projection of just under $40,000, and we're almost 50% low on that particular one. And so again, these two have been way off on both of our cabins that we've put in here. It's not even really close. And if you were out there and you were just using these two tools, and you said, I've done my due diligence because I use 2 different tools, and they both say that this is just not going to be a performing asset. It's not going to give me the cash flow numbers that I want. I can see how people would do that, and I can see how you could possibly be misled by these softwares and the numbers that they just spit out if you just punch in an address. So last up on the hit list here is the property we call Pop's Pinnacle. It is a place that we rent as a 3-bedroom, 2-bath with the maximum occupancy of 8 people. It has pretty spectacular views. It's a really nice log cabin, but it was also hit by that winter storm that affected the other 2, and so it had a big problem with revenue around the December, January, February marks of the 22 into 23. We also did not have this for the full calendar year in 2022, so we can't exactly give you apples to apples for the other 2 that I just showed you because we only bought it in October of 22, and so 23 will be our first full year of earnings. So what I did is just kind of went back in time from the date that we are now, which is November 10th, 2023 to November 10th, 2022. And when you look at that, we have almost $76,000 of gross revenue for this one. And again, I do feel like that's kind of that we undersold that one, and we could do potentially better. But that's the numbers that are actually come through, and that's what we're going to look at. This is where these tools have come much closer to the actual number, and I think that the reason for that is that initially this cabin did the majority of its bookings through Airbnb. It is actually still more Airbnb heavy as far as how many bookings we get. When you saw the revenue numbers there, they looked pretty equal, but we had a lot of really big bookings during the summer months. There was a couple months where we did $10,000, $11,000, $12,000 in a single month. But for the most part, Airbnb is still making up the majority of the bookings here. And so you can see that Airdna came out to $72,700, which is pretty darn close to that $76,000 mark, when Rabbu actually overshot us at $83,787. And to be honest with you, I think that is where that property is going to end up coming in when we look at 2023's numbers altogether. And so on this particular one, they got fairly close to the actual numbers that we are seeing on in real life. As we've seen today, there was 2 out of 3 that were gigantic swings and misses. The third one actually hit fairly accurately. And so when you guys are out there looking for properties, are you going to be able to take the word of these aggregate calculators, if they only come up accurately on a 1 out of 3 basis. That's not that great. It works for, Major League Baseball for a hitting percentage, but not so great if you are looking to, plop down $500,000 plus for one of these rental properties. And so, I want you guys to keep that number in mind, because this is a gigantic investment. A lot of folks, I think, take this almost too lightly, where they're just going to put down 10 to 20% of that $1 million mark, which is still, $100,000 to $200,000. That's nothing to take lightly. You need to be intimately familiar with the market that you are getting into, which is the reason why we picked the Smoky Mountains market. I have been going to the Smoky Mountains since before I was born. My mother was pregnant with me. They have pictures of me in my mom's belly while they're at Gatlinburg, and I have been going there for decades since. I'll be 40 here in like 3 or 4 days. And so I've had 4 decades of experience just traveling there, in addition to the time that I've looked there and now own there. And so I can tell you pretty accurately what a property is going to be able to make, what exactly to look for in that property, as far as if having a log cabin, a fireplace, it has to have a hot tub, something like a pool table or an air hockey table at the very minimum. Views do better than not views. Even, particular areas that I feel like are better or worse for investing in that particular area, among the little neighborhoods and such. Before you guys plop down all of this money and your credit and your time, because this takes more time to manage than a stock market portfolio or than a portfolio of long-term rentals, you need to become intimately invested in the area that you're going to. We looked in Florida. We couldn't exactly, we vacationed in Florida, but we haven't been going to the same spot. We couldn't exactly nail down what our revenue was going to be, our expenses, and so we just went ahead and bailed on that market, not to mention that insurance went insane. The best way to look at these things is just going in and looking at comparables, checking out places that are similar to yours, looking at what their calendars say, seeing what their prices are, and doing that on a massive scale and getting into it. And that is going to require you to take the time to get intimately familiar with it. There is no easy button with this investment. This isn't like looking at a stock market prospectus. This isn't like investing in a low cost index fund where it's pretty predictable the returns you're going to get. And there's hundreds of years of history on the returns. You need to get yourself invested. You need to do the work in order to get those returns that you're looking for that are going to be higher than your long-term rental returns or your stock market investment returns. And just putting in that time is going to make your life a whole lot easier on the downstream side of things, and so that you're not stressing because you either didn't get into something because you relied on one of these online tools exclusively, or you relied on one of these online tools, they told you the wrong information, and now you're stuck with potentially a dud. And so guys, I want you to click on the links that are on the screen right now. They're going to tell you all about how we run this business from afar, cabin tours of all the places that we own, and all the trials and tribulations of running a short-term rental Airbnb VRBO business. If you guys haven't subscribed yet, subscribe down below. Hit that like button for me to help this video out in the YouTube algorithm. I appreciate you guys watching today, and I'll see you in the next one.